Okay guys, so good morning. Final day of the week. 19th of June. 11 days to go. So, unfortunately, 11 more days of the saga. 30th of June being IMF deadline day, and still no deal. Yesterday, Eurogroup meeting, finance ministers convening, and no progress. Well, let me read a couple of quotes. Dijsselbloem, who's the president of the Eurogroup, he summed up yesterday's meeting. This kind of all broke up, and he said that regrettably too little progress has been made, and he said that no agreement is in sight. EC Council President Tusk urged that it is now time to urgently discuss the situation of Greece at the highest political level, and so has convened a Eurozone leaders meeting. This is going to be on Monday. Dijsselbloem, when questioned if he could imagine Greece being forced out of the Euro, said that the way it goes now, we're going in that direction. Then you have Varoufakis on the Greek side. He warned that an accident was drawing dangerously close. So we've got a Monday EU summit, emergency summit meeting. This is for Eurozone leaders. It's probably likely that that meeting will culminate with a take it or leave it deal for Greece. Final deal. The creditors will put in front of them a proposal, and it will absolutely be, this is the best you're getting, take it or leave it, and give them a deadline to decide. I imagine that's how this is going to work. In the meantime, lots of deposit flights out of Greek banks ongoing. We got well over 2 billion euros pulled out of the Greek banking system this week, and ECB's Kouwer, he was made quite, almost a reckless comment, I think, probably regrets it, but he said that he was unsure if Greek banks would be open on Monday. That kind of comment is just, idiotic, because it just adds fuel to the panic. And it's those kind of comments from these kind of people that is pretty irresponsible. Anyway, he said it and then tried to backtrack afterwards, but capital controls, appear to be drawing ever closer. So, just to recap on the scheduling, an emergency ECB Governing Council will be held today, because this is the thing. All these Eurogroup members, it's a 2-day summit. Yesterday was supposed to be on Greece. Today it's on other stuff. But all the key players are still there, so they're all still in the same location. So there's potential for more discussions at some point today. But ultimately, the EU Emergency Leaders Summit is going to take place at 6 p.m. on Monday. Then the Heads of State and Governments Summit. So this is for the whole of the EU. So on Monday it's the Eurozone leaders, and then the following weekend, 25th, 26th of June, you have the full EU Leaders Summit. Okay? And then of course we have the 30th of June IMF payment. Now, so this is it. This is how it rolls on. Just to show you, yesterday there was maybe some movement yesterday. I just want to show you this DAX move. So if you have a look at your charts, around 5:20 p.m. So you might have missed this. Or you probably would have missed this. 5:20 p.m. we had a headline. If you look on your headline feed, so the headline was 5:21. Greek aid is to be extended until the end of the year without assistance from the IMF. This was from Die Zeit, German newspaper. So cue the rally, and actually it was a really big reaction. This was a deal done reaction, and so what happened was the DAX rallied from 11,090 up it rallied almost 200 points. This is a 5-minute chart. It rallied almost 200 points, pretty violent chopping around, and then it drifted all the way back. And it drifted all the way back because about 20 minutes later Merkel said she only has knowledge of a proposal from Greece's creditors when asked about German press reports of a new proposal to the country. So she then downplayed it. Varoufakis put forward a new proposal and it was laughed off. And in fact, Lagarde said, I think Lagarde said after the meeting yesterday, it's time to have a meeting with the adults. So I think that pretty much sums up quite nicely what these creditors think about Varoufakis. And so now, and she was meaning, let's get the proper people in the room here, i.e., let's set up the Eurozone leaders meeting on Monday. Time to talk to the adults. So that sums it up quite nicely. So anyway, we move into today's session, and let's switch our attention away from Greece. I mean, we're going to probably get headlines on Greece today in a similar manner to what's been happening, of course, over the last few weeks. But let's switch our attention to the S&P. What an impressive day yesterday. Really powerful move to the upside. Well, it wasn't powerful, that's the wrong word. It was a creep, but a very sustained, ongoing creep that actually, in the end, turned into a 1.2% up day. And it was a key move from a technical point of view. We're looking on this daily chart here. We broke out of that downward trend line, and then we took out several resistances. So we took out the high from last week. We took out then the high from the 3rd of June, so made a new high for the month. And almost, we got up to 21.19 yesterday. That's only 7 points shy of the all-time high. So, we're right back up here at the top. Now, lots of info from the US yesterday. So first of all, still ongoing reaction to the slightly more dovish Yellen Wednesday. Then we had data that actually pretty much consistently came in better than expected, with the likes of the Philly Fed number. Also, jobless claims came in very low. We then had an inflation print that was lower than expected. And so this all helped, that inflation print helped with the dovish vibe, add on good data, and, we got a nice, and add on the technical factors of breaching the downward trend line here, and it all kind of culminated in a nice positive move to the upside. So the S&P's right up here in sight of that all-time high, and well, we'll see. There doesn't seem to be too much concern here after the breakup of the latest Greek meeting. There's certainly no nervousness in the S&P index, that's for sure. So that may not be the case next week. If this EU leaders summit culminates in a take it or leave it deal and Greece leave it, well then, forget about the S&P staying up around the highs. You will get a decent, I would say, global sell-off. How long that'll last, it's hard to judge, but obviously the Greek thing rolls on, but probably next week now is the key week. So just thinking about, well, let's have a look at the calendar for today. Now, there's unfortunately not much of interest, so it's a really dull day for data. We've got some UK data at 9:30 with some public finances figures. These aren't particularly significant. They're not going to really shift much. We had some really, it's been a good week for sterling. Some good data coming through the wires, some punchy wage growth figures, some touch of hawkishness, and so this is all culminated in cable, actually making a new 8-month high. If I just show you on my daily chart here, then on Wednesday we took out this key top from May. If I just show you on the weekly chart, well then almost 160 in sight, and this is the highest we've traded since November. So an 8-month high here for sterling, and around about this 50% fib of the big sell-off that we had throughout the second half of last year and into the start of this year. So sterling's had a very strong week actually. So a bit more data from the UK at 9:30, but then that's it. There's nothing else. Now what we do have, that's it in terms of data. What we do have today is it's actually not on this calendar by the looks of it. So we do have an ECB meeting. So the ECB are convening to discuss the ELA, the emergency lending window that is the life support machine for the Greek banking system. So there is a meeting at the ECB today, and we may well get comments on that. That's crucial. The ECB earlier in the week announced they increased the ceiling by another 2 billion. Without that facility, this situation would be done and dusted. The Greek banks would have fallen over, and then triggering capital controls and perhaps the default that people are trying to work to avoid. So this ELA funding is absolutely crucial. So we're going to get news on that. Apparently this is happening at 11 o'clock, so we'll get news on that, I imagine. Well, who knows how long that'll take. So that's probably potentially the most important event of the day. Any comments from the ECB following their emergency meeting on the ELA? Okay. Otherwise, let's look at some of these other markets. Well, let's look at crude oil, because I've got it on the daily chart here just to re-emphasize the fact that this thing's going nowhere. We have been flat for 2 months, and very nice and consistent range with the midpoint $60, and we're not far off trading that price now. So directionally, very tough to call in here, and unless we get up towards 61.50, top end of the range, or unless we get down towards, well, you could say sort of 56.50, that's the bottom of the range, then it's tough to make a judgment. This week we've had a slightly narrower range, with the low being back at the beginning of the week down at 58.74, so we're kind of in the middle of the range, and it's a difficult judgment. I think no trade here for now. Let's think about euro dollar. I mean, this has been phenomenally stubborn in the face of Greek risk. Then you get the dollar weakness off Yellen's comments on Wednesday night. Then you get that continuation of that move yesterday, some spikes, some volatility. It's interesting, if I go to a 5-minute chart and just take in the events, those comments from yesterday after the European close, quite interesting to see how the euro reacted, because we spiked higher off the comment that a deal might well have been done. So that's when the DAX jumped to 200 points. But then off Merkel's comments, look what happened. You had a much bigger sell-off of bad news than the rally was off good news. So it's quite interesting. But ultimately, it's a real mess last night, and we've broken lower this morning. So we have broken below that price action from last night and below the low point we had yesterday morning. So technically bearish here, but really this just sets up a move back towards the 113 handle. And if I show you this market on a daily chart, well, we're top end of the range we've had for the last couple of months, and that kind of spike off that headline at 520 last night got us right up to within touching distance of the May high, and now we've reversed back. And so look at these two highs from the 4th and the 10th of June. That's quite important. That's what we broke out above yesterday, and now we're back below it. So I'd say that's now a bearish pattern forming, and we'll see how we go today. But without any data, either European or US data, it's a tough call, and unless we get significant comments from the ECB, I think you'll probably find that the euro dollar consolidates around this area now as we go into the weekend. Let's look at the Bund. So yeah, again, sharp movement last night, opposite, inverse to, let me just get rid of some of these lines, these are old lines, inverse to equities. So off the comment a deal was done, the Bund drove lower, we got about an 80 tick move to the downside, then Merkel's comments undid that, and the market reversed. And actually this morning we opened around about where we were trading before that headline at 520. We've pushed higher and then just consolidating now. So we've had some early exchanges with movements to the upside for the Bund, now consolidation. Movements to the downside for the euro, now a bit of consolidation. And so we move into the midpoint of the European morning. We got some data at 9:30 from the UK. But otherwise, really just looking out for any comments from the ECB following their meeting that begins at 11 o'clock. All right, that's it. Enjoy the final session of the week.